This is the FSO factory on the outskirts of Warsaw, one of two factories that really make up the Polish car industry. They employ about 12,000 people here. Their production is down to around 85,000 units a year. The name of the game in making cars is to sell them to the West to earn hard currency, and it's in that context we should see what's going on inside this factory. They make two basic cars here. One is a variation of the old Fiat 125, formerly called the Polski Fiat, now the FSO 1300 or 1500. They started making it under license in the late 60s. They're still making it and selling it, not only to their own market and elsewhere in Eastern Europe, but also to the UK, mainly, I think, because of its very competitive price, under £3,000. So a lot of car there for the money, although, despite its many modifications, it's still, of course, a very dated car. And then, since 1978, they've produced the Polonez, which is really a smarter and more fashionable hatchback design, wrapped around essentially the same mechanicals, with a number of extras like electronic ignition and carburetor preheat to improve the performance and make it more attractive in the West. But basically, two models then that they're struggling to keep up to date, and in exactly the same way they're desperately concerned to bring their production line up to date with robots. The Polonez body construction line is largely automated with a system bought from the Italians about 7 years ago. These robots haven't made a fantastic improvement in productivity. The plant is still working only something like 70% of its potential throughput. It still takes 51 hours to make a Polish car as opposed to around 25 hours for a Japanese one. Although that isn't as significant as it might at first seem, because wages here, of course, are still very low. The average worker here takes around 13,000 zlotys home a month, around £90, and they are in fact top of the heap in Poland. The real significance of the robots is they've enormously increased the reliability of the world, and that's important. They want to go on selling these cars in the West. This is another critical point in the production line where the engine meets the body shell. They're set up on what are called carousel units that are manoeuvred round, and then they're carefully hoisted up into position and bolted home, all in a matter of minutes. It's not the newest system in the world, but neither is it by any means the oldest. And many car workers in the UK would recognise this very system. But if you look at the wider picture, they're clearly in something of a catch-22 situation. They desperately need a new model if they're going to expand or indeed retain their markets in the West. They also need a much wider plant modernisation programme, because really we've only shown you the best bits. They can only buy those things with hard currency. They can only earn that hard currency by selling more of these rapidly aging models in the Western market. So in a sense, a closed loop. Can they break out of that closed loop, I ask myself, by concluding a deal, a new deal, with, say, a Japanese company who want themselves to break into a wider East European market? In fact, I understand they are now carrying out negotiations with a Japanese company. Okay, now let's for a moment go back to